Good morning. Good morning. We are in part 3 of a pretty quick walk through the Sermon on the Mount. Something we do about every decade is Matthew 5, 6, and 7. We walk through it, and it is our conviction in this 250th anniversary year that this is what America needs. And if you're looking for a church and you find a church where the gospel is preached, give to that church. Because it is not only the hope of your life, it is the hope of America, is the gospel of Jesus Christ. And we every week, we end with the gospel. No matter what we're preaching on, we end with, this is what God did in Jesus Christ. And if you're ready to do that, look at the screens as there's a slide that shows you how you can download our app. And like many of us, we're able to celebrate when we come to worship that we have given already. And through the electronic means, we want you to do that. Dr. Jay Adams was a Christian counselor back in the day, and he had a guy who was someone he knew who asked him to help him love his wife. And he knew this guy prided himself on being such a mature Christian. And Dr. Adams saw that there was a gap between how he saw himself and how he actually lived and related as a husband. So the guy comes in and he says, "Well, what are you struggling with?" He said, I can't stand my wife. I can't love my wife." And he said, "Well, you're a Christian, right, Bob?" And he said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, Jesus commanded, husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church. That's what the word says." And he said, "Well, I can't do it. I can't love her. I can't stand her." And he said, "Well, let's go down a notch." He said, Jesus said, love your neighbor as yourself, and your wife is your closest neighbor. You have to love her. Jesus commands you to do it. And he said, "Well, I don't care. I can't love her as a neighbor either." He said, "Well, let's go down another notch. Jesus said, love your enemies. There's no way out," he said. And today, there's no way out. If you're a Christian, there's no way out of this. There's no way out. Today is the most challenging message you will ever hear in your life. For those of you that aren't Christians and are considering becoming one, it'll make you want to reconsider that. For those who believe like Bob that you are one, this one will make you question whether you really are. And it should. I know it does me. What we're going to look at today in the Sermon on the Mount is the hope of the world. It is the hope in Iran. It is the hope in Gaza. It is the hope in America. It is the hope in your marriage and your life. The most difficult words Jesus ever spoke. Because if people could learn to live the way this describes, I venture to say it would end about all the world's problems. All the world's problems would suddenly go away. But before you hear this, please understand, as the saying goes, the Sermon on the Mount has only been lived by one person with a capital P. And it'll only be lived by one other person. What is it? That capital P person living in that other person. So if you hear this today and you go, "I'm going to start trying to do this," you're going to be frustrated. You're going to go at it with a religious viewpoint. And you're going to fail miserably. To the extent that many people say, I don't want to try this Jesus thing. You see, Christianity, you want to understand Christianity? Christianity is really 3 interconnected relationships. Through Jesus Christ, we have this relationship with God now that changes how we see God. We are radically redeemed, restored, because God came for us. He suffered for us in our place. And then that changes your second relationship, your relationship with yourself. Now you don't see yourself as just a mortgage-paying machine, as fill in the blank, that your identity now is, I am a beloved son, I'm a beloved child, I'm a beloved daughter of God with supreme value and worth, just as I am today. And that changes me academically, that changes me athletically, that changes me professionally, that changes me relationally. My relationship with myself has changed. For those of us who grew up shame-based and we hated ourselves for many years, it changes that. And then thirdly, that then changes how you relate to your world, to the people in it, especially difficult people. And you have them, right? I mean, the Bible says not to hate, but if that ever changes, I got my people picked out. Anybody here with me on that one? And then if you want to understand Christianity, none of those work without the other. If you attempt to do this today, like, I'm going to go to number 3. I'm going to start being better in how I relate to people. Without number 1 and number 2, you will fail miserably. The Sermon on the Mount has only been lived by one person and will only be lived by one other person. That person living in that person. So today we are really in part 2 of the insiders group, where Jesus says, you have heard that it was said, all this external religious behavior modification mantra, that's not the intent. The intent is to go to the inside of the human soul. And I want you to see, as we review the key verse to the Sermon on the Mount, what I was thinking this week, I heard someone say something about, remember when Luke Skywalker is in Han Solo's Millennium Falcon, and he said, can this rust bucket or something similar go any faster? And what he was talking about, as Darth Vader's hordes are on their tail, he's not talking about, hey, take it up 5 miles per hour. He's talking about light speed, right? Light speed is, let's get to the next dimension here. And light speed would then, boom, zoom them into that other dimension. When we talk about Christ, and those of you who are not religious will have an easier time with this than those of you who have a baggage of religion in your background. When we talk about Christ, we are not talking about improving your life 5 miles an hour. We are talking about jumping to light speed. We're talking about a whole nother dimension. And that's what he says. Think of that when you look at Matthew 5:20. I tell you this, look at this on the screen. I tell you this, that unless your righteousness, we'll define that again in a moment, some of you will remember from last week, exceeds that of the Pharisees and the teachers of the law, you will not enter the kingdom of heaven. The kingdom of heaven is the effective range of God's rule over your life right now. It's not about going to heaven when you die. This is about living in heaven's power, protection, and promises right now. And you will not live in that reality if you don't go to the inside. The Pharisees and teachers of the law were the outside, do all these external things like we do. And inside they were corrupt and full of dead men's bones, Jesus said. And he said, unless you go inside, you're not going to experience the next dimension. And it's going to take my dikaiosune. Remember this from last week? The word there for righteousness is the Greek word popularized especially by Plato, dikaiosune, which meant inner set rightness. Like my inside has been set right. I'm no longer controlled by my past. I am set right before God. Look at the definition of dikaiosune that Dallas Willard gave, is the condition of the human soul for it to be in, for the human being to live well and do what is right and best. It is a true inner goodness. And at this point, he then goes to 6 illustrations of what that will look like. Not 6 new laws. Do these things by law. He says this is what that will look like in a person. Number 1, last week, anger and conflict. You won't say, well, I'm a good person because I haven't killed anybody lately. You say, no, you don't understand. When you are contemptuous toward people, that kills. That's the pathway to what eventuates in murder. And last week, if you missed that, There's a reason why he starts with that one, because if you can go to the inside on what triggers your anger, you are on your way. You are on your way, because almost all sin comes from anger, resentment, and bitterness. Almost all sin. Self-destructive, others destructive. Number 2, sexual purity. It's not just that you have this inordinate attraction to women. There is something broken inside of you that you've got to get to, and then flood your life with the means of his inner righteousness, his dikaiosune, and you'll begin to see women as image-bearing creations of God. You'll see them as sisters. And so we talked about that. Let's look at the rest of them today. Number 3, marital unhappiness. Well, let's skip that one, because everybody at SouthBrook's marriage is blissful and harmonious all the time. No. Look what happened in his day. Verse 31. It has been said, anyone who divorces his wife must give her a certificate of divorce. This is Deuteronomy 24:1. If you put your wife away, it would say, then you must authenticate that so she can get remarried. Well, look at this. But I tell you that anyone who divorces his wife, except for marital unfaithfulness, causes her to become an adulteress. Now again, I have literally sat in meetings where this has been used legalistically. I know I hit her, but I've never been unfaithful to her. She can't divorce me. I mean, like literally. We have a whole teaching. There's nothing that we've studied more in this church than the doctrine of divorce. So if you want that, request it, and we'll get you my manuscript on that most likely, which that, don't do while driving, because it'll put you to sleep probably. But this has been used legalistically. And what was happening here, what was happening is this is what we do with the law. We find a way around it. What was happening was basically wife swapping. If she burnt the toast in that culture, as long as I gave her a certificate of divorce, I'm legal. And I can kick her out of the house. I can put her on the street, which is the only avenue a woman put on the street, was to become an adulteress herself, to become a prostitute. And he says, I see right through what you guys are doing. I see right through. You're using the law to wife swap. I see this. I see that you're a Christian and you hate each other and you think you're legal because you haven't gotten a divorce yet. No. We're going on the inside here. We're going on the inside here. We're going to make this legitimate. Number 4, verbal manipulation. He says, not only will you not, with my dikaiosune, seek to reconcile with your spouse, not only will you not see her or see him as a divine image-bearing creation, the other thing is you won't take advantage of people. Look at this. Look at verse 33. Again, you heard that it was said to the people long ago, don't break your oath, but keep the oaths you have made to the Lord. But I tell you, don't swear at all, either by heaven, for it is God's throne, God's there, or by the earth, for it is footstool, God's there, or by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great king, God's there. And don't swear by your head, for you cannot make even one hair white or black, the official Grecian formula verse of the Bible. And you can't do that. Like vows change nothing. But he said, simply let your yes mean not maybe, yes. And your no, not maybe, no. Anything beyond this is manipulation that comes from the evil one. In that day, there was this intricate system of oaths. If you swore, I swear by earth, you kind of meant it. But you couldn't really be held legally bound. If you swore by heaven, you meant it. I mean, it was a really, remember, hand to God, hand to God, hand to God. This was a system of manipulation where you would say, well, I sort of meant it when I swore by the earth. I sort of meant it when I swore by the city. I really meant it when I swore by heaven. And it was just a way to manipulate people. It was a way to lie without being accused of bearing false witness. And Jesus says, I see right through that. I see right through that. This is one that needs a full treatment that I can't today. But we are so bad about bearing false witness and justifying it because the ends justify the means. And Jesus says, with my dikaiosune at work in you, you will no longer manipulate people to get your way. That's what it was. You'll no longer manipulate people to get your way. Doesn't mean some new law that if you're a merchant, you can't barter with people. What it does mean is that your yes means yes and your no, no. Integrity is doing what you said you would do, or not doing what you said you wouldn't do. And he says, don't try this Allow my dikaiosune to come into you every day of your life, and it will happen. Because you won't want to violate someone and their worth. Number 5, insult and injury response. It was the 5th illustration. You have heard that it was said, eye for eye and tooth for tooth. Leviticus 24:20. Now this has been really misunderstood. This was actually a judicial code that limited retaliation. Israel became the most humane culture in the world. Why? Because this was not meant to say, if you poke my eye out, I'm poking your eye. This was meant to limit you. If you killed my cow, I couldn't burn down your farm. I was limited in civil court by what I could expect. Well, what did the teachers of the law do? They down through the centuries is, you take my eye, I'm taking your eye. You take my tooth, I'm taking your tooth, and then some. Because we very rarely retaliate in kind. Almost always we amp up the retaliation. We make it worse. I tell you, verse 39, do not resist an evil person. Oh, look at this. Maybe the most misunderstood statement in Scripture is this one right here. If someone strikes you on the right cheek, turn to him the other also. And this is really where Jesus, without context, loses people. Jesus is teaching that you should never stop injustice. Just let people trample all over you, right? Is that what he's teaching there? No. Remember, verse 20 is the key. When my dikaiosune lives in you, you will be able to rise above insult and injury. Your dignity, your pride will not be your most focused priority to preserve. You are so secure in me. The one word that runs all the way through the Sermon on the Mount is security. You'll be so secure in me that your pride and your dignity, and it will not be your primary focus. And so this phrase, slap on the cheek, is the same euphemism that we use today. Well, that was a real slap on the face. When we say that, we don't literally mean they slapped us in the face. We mean that was an insult. They demeaned me. And Jesus said, with my dikaiosune living in you, you'll be able to go, okay, this is what we're doing. This is what we're doing. And the idea of turn the other cheek is when someone hurts you, you don't close yourself off on that relationship. You don't shut that person out. That we're getting now closer to the pinnacle of these 6 illustrations of what dikaiosune looks like. You will be forgiving. That's the idea. I could imagine that I'm speaking to dozens of people who were hurt by someone this week. And the spirit of this is when you get hurt by someone, you don't say, that's it. I'm done. You don't just stand there and let them keep insulting you. Even Jesus, on trial, there were times when he said, hey, that's not legal. Paul, when he was on trial before Roman magistrates, said, you can't do this to a Roman citizen. So he's not saying, let people trample all over you. What he is saying is, with my dikaiosune, you will have a new reality living in you that is light speed ahead of where you were. A new dimension of security. And now we begin to see why this is the hope of America. This is the hope of America. Retaliation is the name of the game. Remember the story, I think Levi told it a while back, of the young people who took their little sports car and pulled in ahead of an older guy who was in his Cadillac, and they got out of the car and they said, sorry, Gramps, that's what you can do when you're young and you're quick. And when they went inside, he just took that old Cadillac, because he had a number of them, and he just banged into their sports car with his Cadillac, and they came out, and he said, that's what you can do when you're old and you're rich, he said. And when we are living in the reality of dikaiosune, we don't relish revenge. We don't relish retaliation. Look at what verse 40 says. And if someone wants to sue you and take your tunic, Let him have your cloak as well. Security. What does that mean? It doesn't mean if somebody's trying to rob take your wallet, you don't say, hey, you forgot my money clip. Here, take that too. It doesn't mean that. This is not another law. What he's showing is, I am so secure in my righteousness given to me by Christ that when someone is trying to take advantage of me, I can see right through that and I can go, what are they really needing here? What are they really needing here? Verse 41, if someone forces you to go 1 mile, go within 2 miles. Give to the one who asks you. Do not turn away from the one who wants to borrow from you. This was called the tap of the spear. In Roman law, a Roman soldier could come up to you, and if they tapped you with their spear, you would have to carry their burden for 1 mile. You were legally required to stop what you were doing and carry their burden 1 mile. Jesus said, you be a 2-miler. You don't resent it when someone imposes upon your schedule and your plan. You have a new security living in you, a new reality. And when someone imposes on you, you go, okay, let's play 2. Let's do 2. And this is remarkable. If you're starting to go, no way, this is not realistic, then you're starting to hear it. You're starting to hear it. How does a kingdom person respond to disrespectful imposition? Let's go. I've got security. My dignity is intact through Jesus Christ and what he's done for me at the cross. I don't need to be the one who, how dare you do that to me? And if that wasn't enough, then we get to number 6. Treatment of enemies. Everybody got their person in mind? Ready? You have heard that it was said, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. This was how, if Jesus was quoting the Old Testament law, he would have said, it is written. He's not saying that. He's saying, you have heard it was said. This is the way the Pharisees and the teachers of the law teach it. You've heard that said? But I tell you, the words that eventually turned Rome upside down. The reason I know it's the hope of America is it is what ultimately turned the Roman Empire upside down. They forgave their enemies. Love your enemies. And pray for those who persecute you, that you may be sons of your Father in heaven. He causes his sun to rise on the evil and the good. You're really no different than they are. He sends rain on the righteous and the unrighteous. And if you love those who love you, what reward will you get? Hey, the mafia does that, right? He says, or not even the tax collectors doing that. They were the mafia. Hey, Nico, oh, Nico, mwah, mwah. You know, they do that. And if you greet only your brothers, what are you doing more than others? I mean, there's nothing special about that. Do not even pagans do that? But to be hung on the cross and say, Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. Ah. Now that's different. Now, it's important that we know what he means when he says love your enemies. As many of you know, there were 3 major words in the Greek language for love. Eros was romantic love, sexual love. Phileo was brotherly love. And agape was the willful love. I choose to value the interests of that other person in this moment. And so he's not using eros, he's not using phileo, he's saying agape, which is active benevolence toward a person. We've seen this acted out in things like the school shootings with the Amish community in Pennsylvania, and they embraced the shooter. I mean, just remarkable agape. When you see things like that, you're seeing dikaiosune. You're seeing this is different. This is a different level of love. And if you say you're a Christian, this is what you're called to. And there's no way out. If you didn't think you need connection to Christ on a daily basis before today, you will now. Dallas Willard said, saints burn way more grace than sinners ever could. This is why. On any given day, there are people who impose their will upon you, who contradict you, who hurt you, who demean you. And you can't just say, okay, now I need to pray. No, you better be filled with the dikaiosune of Jesus before that ever happens. And that's what he's calling you to, SouthBrook. Few of us ever go through life without collecting a group of people that, frankly, we would not miss them if they died. Let's just put it the way it is. I mean, there have been people that in my mind, my own funeral procession is going to shrink when I say this. But there have been people that it has come to my mind, Lord, why don't you just take them home right now? Like, why don't you, kill them, God? I mean, they would... But your relationship with Christ is, it is just not optional to be religious. There has to be something that jumps you to light speed. And that is, Jesus says, my righteousness. Colossians 1:27 says, Christ in you is the hope of God's glory in you. So simple. Friends, the number one win of the Christian community is when we love our enemies. We could raise the dead, and that's not as big a win as you having something different operating in you, from the person who cut you off in traffic to the spouse who violates your trust, to the neighbor whose dog does its doo-doo on your yard. Whatever it is, to be able to agape is love of another kind. And people say, this is so impractical. It does not work in the real world. If you just love and forgive people who are bad people, they're just going to trample all over you. This is the most impractical thing I've ever heard. Well, first, this does not mean you let people walk all over you. And second, if you're a Christian, keeping your heart open to people is the idea here, that you won't be so insecure that you just, that's it, I'm not loving again, I'm not trusting again. If you keep your heart open to people, you will forgive. Why? Because you were once an enemy of God and you were forgiven. That's the no escape plan. There's no way getting out of this. And if you think this is impractical, I'll tell you what's really impractical. And some of you you've gone down this path for years. What's really impractical is spending your life pulling your circle tighter and tighter because you've been hurt by people and you're never going to be hurt again, and tighter and tighter. And one day you're lonely and you're isolated and you're bitter and your heart and your soul has shrunk. Why? Because you're not going to let that happen to you ever again. That's impractical. We now know it physically alters your being. My contact just came out. Man, that is some serious preaching when you blow your contacts out of your head. And I know this because, I was telling Levi today, I was reading Charles Spurgeon, the great Baptist preacher, said to be a pastor requires the mind of a scholar, the heart of a child, and the skin of a rhinoceros. And it's so true that, that all of us, to be within others, to live above with those we love, oh, that'll be glory. To live below with those we know, that's another story, right? We all have people, some within our own family, that we say, I'm never making my heart open again. And we now know that's connected to cancer, and it's connected to so many other things. That what literally happens in you is you die. Think of these words. You'll know who said them. Love anything in your heart will certainly be wrung and possibly broken. If you want to make sure keeping it intact, you must give your heart to no one. Wrap it carefully around with your hobbies, your avocations, your luxuries, your leisure pursuits. Avoid all real entanglements. Lock it up and have it be safe in the casket of your selfishness and self-protection. But in that casket, safe and dark, your heart will change. Yes, it will not be broken. It will become unbreakable. impenetrable, irredeemable. The only alternative to the risk of tragedy is self-damnation. Hell is isolation. You tell me what's practical, friend. And I'll tell you someone who is a complete human being, who has dikaiosune at work in their life, that when they are hurt, they now begin to say, Jesus, let's actualize now your righteousness in me that sets me free from bitterness, from anger, resentment. And I am frustrated with my inability to communicate how important this is. What I desire for this church is a people that are free. At the bottom of the Statue of Liberty is John chapter 8. If the Son sets you free, you will be free indeed. Do you know that? Amen. And we have a nation of people who are not free because we are a nation of retaliation. And as long as that's the case, we will not be free. And politics cannot fix what politics did not break. Politics did not break this. Sin is at work in the human heart. There's a story, it's a true story. I can't remember which czar it was. It was one of the last czars who had a friend who had a son, and that friend died, and that friend asked if he would raise his son, and the czar did. The czar raised him, fed him, clothed him, educated him, as if he were his own son. And the son came of age, and he joined the army, the young man did, and he became an accountant. True story. He became an accountant in the army with responsibility over a large part of the army's budget. And he also got into gambling, which many of you young men are doing. I know. I have your phones bugged. And he got into debt, and he had to embezzle funds from the army and cook the books so that he could pay off his debts. And one day the gig was almost up, and he's up in his room, and he has the books open, and there's no way out of this. And he just takes a bottle and he gets ravenously drunk so that he'll have the courage to take his own life with a gun. But he gets so drunk that he collapses onto the table where the books are. The czar was one of the czars who liked to spy on his people. Nothing's changed in Russia in 100 years. And he would frequently put on a corporal's uniform and just go out among the people to see what was the morale, what was really going on in people's lives. And he went to this place, this building where his stepson was, and he goes into the room and he sees the books open. And he sees the massive amount of debt that this young man has increased in his life and burdened his life with. And he takes a pen and paper and he writes a note. I am the czar. This debt has now been paid in full. And he put it on the desk and he left the room. The young man, out of his drunken stupor, woke up. And he saw not just the note with the czar's signature, but he saw the imprint of the czar's signet ring, his ring of official authority, stamped on that note. Does everybody see the gospel in this? You were in debt. You could not get out. He loved you so much that he absorbed your debt, so much so that when he took his last breath, he used an accounting term. He said, "It is finished," which meant, in accounting terms, fully paid. You were fully paid. You now were once an enemy of God, are now one with God through Jesus Christ. Now go love your enemies. Verse 47, Jesus says, therefore, be perfect as your Father in heaven is perfect. And we read that as Americans, and our understanding of perfection is be without flaw. The word perfect is teleos, be complete, be whole. Be whole through my righteousness, because you can be. You can be truly free, because even people crucifying you doesn't make you lose your love. Would you right now visualize the next few minutes? Maybe sitting in your chair for a few minutes. Think of that person. Maybe it's your spouse, I don't know. Will you pray for them as you get up and you take the symbol of his body and blood that he paid your debt, and say to him, I receive your love and righteousness. I go to the root of why I'm so bitter and angry and insecure. I repent of that insecurity, and I realize now I'm a beloved child of the Most High King with supreme value and authority, just as I am today, and I can go love. Amen. Father, through the inadequacy of my words, may your word set us free. For if the Son sets us free, we will be free indeed on the inside. And everyone said, Amen. See you next week, everyone.